Welcome back to the GT Cup Championship for rounds 23 to 26 here at Snetterton. And if you remember, we have raced here before, and that was a very dramatic weekend of racing last time, wasn't it, Piers?
Yeah, it was a good weekend of racing. We saw some great racing in all of the groups, and of course that amazing finish in Group GTH that came down to the wire between Morpheus Racing and the Greystone lot, and that was great. And I'm hoping for more racing just like that this weekend and what is the final 2 days of the championship. So yeah, looking forward to it.
Hopefully it should be good. And in terms of the weather, last time we were here it was super sunny, but now it's a little bit, I'd say not chilly, but it's windy. It's a little bit, I'd say a bit moist. Would you use that word, Piers?
I don't think it's moist. It's quite dry actually out here. But
last time it was super dry.
Yes, it was.
And that obviously affects the tyres and it affects the temperature. So how do you think that's going to play out in the race?
Well, it is blustery. We've got a heavy headwind down the start-finish straight, which is then going to be a heavy tailwind down towards Brundle and Nelson. So that will be playing into how the circuit races wheel to wheel.
Well, it's a very interesting circuit. So why don't we take a look at where we're racing today via the track guide?
So let's have a look then at the Snetterton 300 circuit. Ritchie's is the first corner, and from there it's up towards the right-hander at Wilson. The track goes uphill towards Palmer and you head in towards Agostini, a tight left-hand hairpin. From there, it's the flick at Hamilton before you head through Oggies, and Williams, really important corner because you carry all of the speed down the Bentley straight and then into the tricky Brundle and Nelson, through the daunting bomb hole, and then the never-ending right-hander at Cornwicks brings you in towards the final corner, Murray's, up the centre straight and over the start-finish line. That's a lap of the Snetterton 300 circuit. It's just under 3 miles long, 2.969 miles long. And on the basis of that it's an old RAF base from World War II, it's quite flat. There's just 9 metres of elevation change throughout the course of the 3 miles. Plenty of different challenging corners. There are 12 turns in total, and that is the Snetterton 300 circuit here in Norfolk.
Great to see where we're racing this weekend. But Piers, talk to me a little bit about Snetterton. We've been here before. It's a bit of a tricky track, but can you give us a bit more of an insight?
Yeah, we've come here once before this season, produced some good racing, very technical middle sector. We've got fast straights, a long straight down here into turn 1, and then a long straight towards Brundle and Nelson on the back straight. So opportunity to slipstreaming, and it's really a track that sort of kind of opposites for the cars. Like some cars are quick in a straight line, and then other cars are quick and twisty bits, and this kind of brings everything together because that middle sector is tight, it's narrow. It's hard for the bigger GT3 and GTO cars to get past the potentially slower Group GTH cars, which can mean that, especially in the pit stop races, traffic is important, traffic management. And then you've also got, when we get the pit stops in later, it's quite a narrow pit lane. We're going to have to do sort of herringbone parking rather than a sort of a normal bay park as we have on some of the bigger circuits, which makes the pit stops even more important. But no, I'm looking forward to it. It should be good. The drivers like it. I'm looking forward to another good weekend of racing.
Well, in terms of the last sector, I spoke to a few drivers and they always say it's probably not their most favourite part of the track. And why is that?
Really, I quite like the last sector here,
really?
actually.
Why?
Yeah. Well, the last sector starts at Brundle and Nelson, which is after the long straight down the back. You're braking down under the bridge, braking and turning left and then right. Then you've got the nearly flat bomb hole, which goes down and up, which I think is quite a good fun corner. Probably nearly flat in the GTHs, but maybe not flat in a GT3. And then just behind us in the distance, can't quite see it, but it's Coram, which is basically a long, almost 180-degree right-hander that you have to balance the car on the throttle, and then you have to sort of go from throttle to braking, while then also turning from the right to the left-hand side. So it is tricky. Very technical. The car is right on the edge, which is why it's quite enjoyable, but I suppose it's not quite your standard, brake, change, turn, accelerate. Some of the more standard circuits are, which I quite like, but I suppose everyone has preferences.
Well, I guess driver style is crucial then. If you have that type of style where you want it a bit trickier, you're going to like it then. Well, speaking about when we were here last time, there was a few interesting things that happened in the races, and one being Ian Loggie's collision. Unfortunately, then he was out of the race and he didn't get back out on Sunday, did he? Which was so unfortunate because he's back here racing with us this weekend. We've not seen him for a while, so I'm hoping it's a better weekend for him.
Yeah, of course, he had a big crash up at, I can't remember which race it was, but on the first lap, went hard into the barriers on the left-hand side, car was done, so that was his weekend over, which is a real shame, but back again this weekend. Different driver pairing though, because he was going to have Logan Hanna alongside him that weekend in the 720 SGT3 McLaren, whereas he's not racing in that car this weekend, and he's got a new teammate.
He does, and also we should speak about Group GTH. Great battles, especially between Phil Keane and Mikey Broadhurst on that last lap of the race, and we were there in the Morpheus Racing Garage and we saw how happy and elated they were after. Wasn't that amazing?
That was so cool. We were hanging around the garage, staying out of the cool weather or what it was at that point, because Snetterton, notoriously windy with it being so flat here in Norfolk, but yeah, it was great racing, great to watch, great to be part of the atmosphere, and it was probably one of the highlights of the season for me, at least.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. And we've got Callum Davis racing with us this weekend in Group GTH, and he really gave them a run for their money at the last round at Donington. So that's going to be really interesting to see how that plays out. Also, we had some international drivers, didn't we? Jesse Crone joined as a guest participant with Darren Leung last time, and at Donington, Darren did really, really well with his teammate Dan Harper. So let's see what happens, Piers.
Yeah, let's see what happens this race. Of course, last race weekend, Paul Bailey is looking to seal the Group GTO Championship and the overall championship. He's at the lead of that, but Charlotte Gilbert is hoping to at least push it to the last race of the season and see if she can get in there.
So I've got a question for you then, Piers. What has been your favourite moment of the season?
There's been a lot of highlights this year, hasn't there, Amber?
Yeah.
I think the race that we mentioned here, last time we were at Snetterton, between the two Group GTH cars of Phil Keane and Mikey Broadhurst, came down to the last lap. That was great. Also, the battle we had at the last round for the win, I think it was in race 1 last weekend, or last time we were racing in the GT Cup Championship. Tom Roach was pushing really hard, defending hard, attacking hard. We had some great racing over the whole weekend last time out. And then also, we went to Silverstone Grand Prix circuit as well. What an amazing circuit. The drivers loved that, and we had some great racing there too. So many highlights to choose, but I think one at Snetterton was actually one of my highlights.
There has been so many great moments, so why don't we actually start to get into the action for this weekend? Stay tuned. And what are you doing with us this weekend? So you're racing with Charlotte Gilbert, aren't you, in Top Cats Racing? How did that come about?
Yeah, exactly. With Charlotte, and it's going really well so far. Charlotte put it on pole, which is all I could have asked for, really. But I got the call on Thursday at 6 o'clock, and I had the drive down. They asked me to be the pro this weekend for them and sort of reference the car, get the setup there, and sort of help them along this weekend and try and win the GTC Championship.
Then talk to me about the setup. So I spoke to Charlotte very briefly, and it's something different to what she's used to. Obviously, it's more for a professional driver. So can you explain that a little bit more?
Yeah, so when I first got on the car, they run it very soft. So all the damper settings and spring settings were very soft. So the first thing I noticed was when I braked, the whole car the weight balance shifted too far forwards. So straight away, made the damper stiffer, did a bit of bar changes here and there, and the car's now handling how it should. I went again 1.5 quicker straight away, so it was the right change, but Charlotte needs to now adapt and learn to this because the driving style has changed a lot. It's a lot more trail braking and a lot more patience at mid-corner, which with the soft car didn't really work, so she has to learn this, but she's really getting there and she's doing really well.
I know you used to race in these types of cars, and you said that you race another Lamborghini, you race the Mercedes and other series. How are you finding this one?
It's different, yeah, because this is a Super Trofeo, not a GT3. So in Europe, I'm racing with Grasser in a GT3 Lambo, but this one's got a lot less aero, but a lot more power, which is a lot different. On a straight, it's ridiculous, but through the corner and braking is nowhere near the same amount of efficiency. So it's a lot different. It's another different driving style to learn, but I'm having good fun.
And obviously you raced at many tracks in the UK before, obviously Snetterton. How do you find this track in particular?
Snet's probably the worst in the UK, to be honest.
I was waiting for that.
Yeah, it's probably the worst. I mean, the UK doesn't really have any bad tracks, but Snet's definitely on the lower scale. But in a Super Trofeo with the straights, it's quite easy. You get to the straight line, press your foot down, and it's a lot easier than a GT3. So it's not bad Snet, but it's not my favourite.
So why isn't it your favourite though? Why do many drivers sort of have a different opinion of Snetterton?
It just doesn't flow. You know, you got Brands GP and it's just an incredible track. Alton Park, they all flow really nicely, where here you got so much stop-start, and then the track limits, you don't really know where you sit all the time. So it's just a wishy-washy track, really. But in an aero car, it is a good track. But once you're in a mechanical grip car like the Super Sphere or a GT4, it changes from a good track to average.
Okay, then how are you anticipating the next few races to go for you and Charlotte?
Hopefully really well. As I said, Charlotte put it on pole, so that's a really, really good positive for the start of the weekend. Warm-up, I've done the fastest lap the car did. I was very close to GT3s, so hopefully I can get probably in a GT3 battle here and there, have a bit of fun, and hopefully we can win the championship.
Amazing. Thanks for chatting with me, Sam. Good luck for the races.
We've managed to find the Kendall Developments garage now, and we've got the Short brothers, Morgan and Marcus. You're back once again in the glistening white Mosler, which is great to see on track. Good to have you both back on the grid, and also good to see the Mosler on the grid, but there's been a few changes, I believe, to the car since you last drove it.
Yeah, so the engine went on the in lap after the last race at Brands Hatch. We went to a spare engine for Snet, which was the next round, and then that blew up in testing, which was sort of expected. It wasn't really built for this sort of stuff. So we went back to the drawing board. We've changed the engine now from 7 litres down to 6.3, so it's a lot less torquey. We've lost a little bit of power, but it's a lot less torquey, a lot nicer to drive, and hopefully won't shred itself apart again.
Well, to finish first you have to finish, and Marcus, you're back in the grid. You've driven the car now with its new upgrades. How does it feel? Is it a bit different to drive?
Yeah, it's much different to drive. It's much smoother, less torque, less power. It's much more like a modern car now rather than a beast that's trying to kill you. But it's really enjoyable to drive now with this new engine. So we're just having some issues still, but we're fixing those now and then getting ready for the sprint race soon.
And we've seen both of you on the grid various times this year, but it's good to be a brotherly pairing once again.
Yeah, no, it's good to be back together. Obviously, Marcus hasn't actually raced anything since Brands Hatch, so it's good that he's back up to speed pretty quickly. Obviously, I've been doing other bits and pieces here and there, which has been good to have a bit of variety, but it's really good to be back in this. Like Marcus said, still some teething problems with the new engine, which sort of hindered us in qualifying, but we've still got a good position, so hopefully we can build on that today. Marcus doing the majority of driving today, and then I'll jump in for the majority tomorrow.
Sounds like a good balance, and I want to hear about your plans for the week. I say plans for the weekend. I want to hear about your hopes for the weekend in terms of results, but also I want to hear who's going to be faster this weekend.
Well, we'd love to finish every race and love to finish the weekend with the engine still completely in one piece. So that is the priority for this weekend, and we want to do as well as possible. We know that we have a good chance of getting a good result in our class, and we're hoping to stick our nose in with the front three who are ahead of us, but they do seem a little bit too quick for us at the moment. But yeah, me and Morgan have been very similar all year, but I don't know, we'll see. When it gets
very diplomatic.
Yeah, when it gets to the endurance race, we'll see, but it's been very similar.
Been very similar. You agree with that?
Yeah, no, we work really well together. So people always ask if it's difficult working as brothers, but we have we get on really well. We've got a really good working relationship. We've got different strengths as well. Marcus, has really, really good one-lap pace, and I've got probably slightly better overall in a race pace. But we complement each other really well. We've got different driving styles, and it works together really well. And we both, want each other to be as fast as possible because we are a team at the end of the day, and we want to do well. So it works really well.
Brilliant. And of course, Kendall Developments are doing a great job prepping the car. So good to see you back on the grid. Amber, I think you found someone else. We're at the back of the pits, and it was just guided by Russ Lindsay. Russ, you had some gearbox issues last time out. Yeah. Unfortunately, the Porsche is between two lorries. Doesn't look like it's going to be out on circuit again.
No, it isn't. We lost the gearbox at the last race of the last event, and we thought we'd prepared it over the last couple of weeks, but unfortunately we blew it in practice and in quali today. So it's the reason we didn't get a qualifying time. So it's out basically, and not much we can do, although one small caveat, not good for me.
Yeah.
But,
really hard luck, and I can tell you were really looking forward to the last weekend of the year. You were hoping to help with the team's championship as well.
We were expecting 3-4 trophies this weekend and the team's championship. So we've got to race 2 cars to be in the team's championship. We're winning at the moment. We're about 40 points up front, but we've only raced 1 car. There's a very good chance we'll get caught and beaten. So we've found another car, which is a positive thing. It's a GT3, and we're very, very pleased. We think to announce that Marcus Clutton's going to be in the car with us, which is great. But it can only put one driver in it with him, and Patrick's going to go in, Patrick Collins. So unfortunately for me, end of a race weekend, but bloody good race season. So there we go.
It has been a good season. You've had some pretty high highs, some tough times as well, as we've seen throughout the year. Just sum up the year from your own perspective, if you don't get out on circuit, because you never know, something might happen. But
I mean, something might happen, we'll see. Oh, look, it's been amazing, fantastic. And also, this has been a fabulous car to drive. McLaren 570S last year was nice, but this is so much better. And fingers crossed we'll come back next year with something else. And it's been fab. We're very pleased to be winning the teams. We're second in GTC. So we're in a good position to do well by the end of the season. But hey, one of those things. That's racing, isn't it? So
that is racing, but you'll give it. I'm sure the team will give it the best go, and we'll hopefully see, in your eyes, see you guys crown champion. But we'll have some good weekend regardless. Russ, thanks for giving us the inside line.
We might see you out on circuit. You never know. But
you never know.
Thanks, Piers. Well done.
Cheers. Thank you.
We're about to head into the first sprint race of the weekend and the last Saturday sprint race of the season. I'm actually really sad, Piers, but we saw you caught up with Russ Lindsay beforehand. So tell us about that. He won't be racing today.
Yeah, we just heard from them, didn't we, that unfortunately, gearbox issues that befell that Porsche at Donington have resurrected, and that Porsche is no longer for this weekend, unfortunately. But there's a bit of a lifeline. I think potentially they've got a Lamborghini out. We'll see whether they manage to get that out in time. I think it borrowed one off another team who had one, and but Russ unlikely to be driving this weekend, but his teammate will be.
Well, that Lamborghini will be racing in Group GT3, won't there? So that means there'll be less cars in Group GTC. I think we'll only have the Ferrari of Graham and Dan Dezil, and also Top Cats Racing of Charlotte Gilbert, and a new teammate of Sam Neary.
Yes.
And he raced in GT Cup Championship before as well, so it's great to have him back out on the
just
track.
Race.
Go on, Piers.
He was champion, wasn't he?
He was champion. I've heard that today, so congratulations, Sam Neary. Let's see how he does. Speaking of the Lamborghini, though, they've changed the setup, so I caught up with them beforehand, and Charlotte's changed it to a pro setup, which is a little bit different for her, as she is an amateur driver, so she's getting used to it, so it'll be interesting to see how it plays out for her.
Yeah, it'll just probably be the way that the setup of the electronics, the driver aids will be. So it'll probably be a bit more aggressive, but potentially allow her to just reach those last 2 or 3 tenths that she needs to potentially get to well, basically, hopefully the championship, if it's at all possible. It's going to be tough.
Hopefully there'll be some interesting racing. I think we need to make our way off the grid because the race is about to start. So stay tuned for this race, and there's going to be so much action.
Side of that third row of the grid, that's where we should see the first of the Lamborghinis in the field, which will be Charlotte Gilbert for this first race, and alongside is the Ferrari, which will be in the hands of son Dan Dezil for this first sprint race. Then it's Paul Bailey in his McLaren and Jay Shepherd that line up on row number 4. And then row number 5 is Chris Murphy in the BMW, who has got for company alongside him Callum Davies, who makes his debut in GT Cup this weekend at the wheel of the fastest car in Group GTH in qualifying, the McLaren. Then it's going to be the car of Chris Hart, who is there in 11th place, and alongside him is the sister car to it in the second of the cars from Morpheus Racing, which is John Curry. Before we then see on the 7th row of the grid, the number 42 car, Charles Dawson, and alongside him is Phil Carter. The 8th row of the grid, it's Tim Docker, and alongside Tim Docker is going to be Alana Carter, who starts at the wheel of the Lotus Evora GT4. And then at tail end of the field, we'll have David Franklin, but of course we will also see that Lamborghini at the tail end of the field, which should have Patrick Collins on board for this first sprint race. So Patrick Collins thrown in at the deep end, really. Different car, GT3, more power. Hasn't really had the chance to test it, or drive it, or qualify it, straight into the race.
Hey, it's what dreams are made of, right? I'm sure he'll enjoy it nonetheless, because those cars are pretty, I mean, any GT3 car is pretty damn cool to drive, especially, well, not normally the first time you drive it is in a race situation, but back of the field, wise thing to do. Glad they've got the car out so they can still help JMH team battle continue on and also get the drivers out on circuit. It's a shame we're not going to see Russ Lindsay out at least today and potentially not tomorrow as well, as we heard from him just before the race. But here we are, beginning to line up. First race of the weekend, second time here at Snetterton this year, so a lot of the drivers will be a bit more well-versed than a lot of the other circuits, but hopefully we get away better than we did at the first race last time we were here.
Let's hope so, yeah, let's hope so. So most of the championship's still up for grabs. The overall championship's still up for grabs. So is the likes of GT3, GTC, GTH are all still up for grabs. And also we've got the Sporting Challenge still up for grabs this weekend. So there's only a couple of championships that are already stitched up. So Hugo Cook in the Audi, starting on pole position. He was about 0.6 of a second quicker than Tom Roach in qualifying, but the two are about to head up towards the lights, which go out now. We get round 23 of the 2023 championship season underway for GT Cup as the cars charge their way up towards Ritchie's for the first time. It's going to be Hugo Cook that leads away from Tom Roach in second place. Ian Logie was trying to sneak his way through, went wheel to wheel with the Mosler as they went round in towards the braking area for Ritchie's for the first time. But it's Hugo Cook from Tom Roach, from Ian Logie, and then it's Marcus Short at the wheel of the Mosler, and Charlotte Gilbert picks up the lead in Group GTC in the early stages because she's got the Ferrari of Dan Dazil behind.
Got the bit between her teeth. They are pushing on this weekend. Sam Neary alongside them. Quick. Yeah, good move on the first lap, but we're clean so far. Touch wood.
Yeah, there we can already see a little bit of daylight just appearing here with Hugo Cook at the wheel of the Audi, out of the box and on his way quickly. The top three just breaking away from the Mosler. So they did have a few issues in testing yesterday with, I think, HT leads burning through again in that car, which they've been very purposely to try and stop that happening, because that's an issue they'd had, but I think they've finally got to the bottom of it. Let's just hope that that Mosler, albeit now in its 6.3 litre configuration, goes well this weekend. We've had a change in GTC. Charlotte Gilbert, the Lamborghini was ahead of the Ferrari, but now I see the Ferrari's ahead of the Lambo.
Yeah, I didn't see that on camera, but it's going to be a fight that continues on, hopefully, for the rest of this race. And two very, very similarly paced cars, two slightly different looking cars, but they're quick in a straight line. And is that Paul Bailey right behind them?
It is Paul Bailey right behind him, and then you can see the Lotus wiggling under the control of Jay Shepherd, the National Motorsport Academy Lotus. So the two black cars, but it's the Lamborghini with the day-glow roof, and then the all-black Lotus that sits behind. We'll also pick up on what's going on in GTH in the early stages.
Yeah, GTH has been one of the most fiercely fought groups this season. I got there in the end. Fiercely fought groups this season, with many of their races coming down right to the wire, and 3, 4, 5 cars to lead a number of times. And it looks like we're going to have something similar in this race with the McLaren at the front of the field as it stands in that group.
Yeah, Callum Davis going well at the wheel of what is, I think, the leading Group GTH car at the moment. Yes, the Race Lab number 13 McLaren Artura leads Group GTH, and Callum Davis is far more used to driving things like Ginettas. He's currently running second in the Ginetta GT Championship in the GTP class for this year, but has opted to take up GT Cup for this weekend, and certainly showed his pace in qualifying, and at the wheel of that number 13 car is showing a clean pair of heels in 10th place to everybody in GTH that's queuing up behind.
Yeah, he was very, very fast the previous run at Donington as well, so he's clearly got the grips with that McLaren and doing just the same here.
There is Philip Carter at the wheel of the number 14 Greystone McLaren. Greystone, who have had a great season of racing both domestically and in Europe. And at the moment, Phil Carter is trying to get onto the coattails of the car ahead, but there's a spin, and Charlotte Gilbert is facing the wrong way at the wheel of the Top Cats Racing Lamborghini, slap bang in the middle of the circuit, Piers, trying to fire up the engine. Yeah,
you can see the flames being kicked up from the rear. Looks like she's fired it up. That is a real shame. I can only speculate. There was no one there. I can only speculate that what's happened there. Potentially she's gone up the inside of Dan Dazil in the Ferrari, potentially dragged the brakes a bit too long into the corner, had a spin round, or maybe just lost it on her own.
Yeah, either way, she's now right the way at the back of the field, and that is not at all what Charlotte or the Top Cats team wanted. I was thinking exactly the same as you. Is there a little bit of damage to the front corner of that Artura of Callum Davis, or is it just the light shining off
No,
it?
I think it is a little bit of damage there, which I don't know where he would have picked that up, because he's not been close enough at the back of someone. Maybe we didn't catch it earlier on, maybe it was a legacy of the start, potentially.
Yeah, quite possibly. I was the same as you. There was just something, the sunlight glinting off that in a different way that we weren't expecting. So 25 minutes were on the clock. We are coming up to the first 4 minutes of this race, already having elapsed. Philip Carter at the wheel of the number 14 McLaren closes in on the brakes onto the car of John Curry that lies ahead. So this is going to be for 13th and 14th overall, but it's going to be for something like 4th and 5th in Group GTH at this stage, whilst out the front, Hugo Cook continues to lead the way and sets the fastest lap of the race.
Yeah, romping away at the start, was quite considerably faster than anyone else in the field in qualifying, and it's continuing that pace on, only a second away from where he was in qualifying, the 2 or 3 laps into the race, so straight on the money. Tom Roach not far off in terms of lap time. Actually, Tom Roach at the fastest first sector this time by, so potentially that gap may come down. 1.8 seconds is the gap between first and second overall, but that isn't insurmountable in 20 minutes.
No problem at all. Tom Roach will keep plugging away the Welshman, see what he might be able to do. The same as Philip Carter is still plugging away at the wheel of the McLaren, trying to close in onto the coattails of John Curry. This is still for 4th and 5th places overall in Group GTH. Just up the road from them is Charles Dawson at the wheel of the all-black Ram Racing Mercedes. So many different manufacturers represented in GTH over the course of this weekend, the likes of McLaren and Mercedes, and with the introduction of the new Lotus as well, that's another one to add to the list, isn't it?
Only missing the Aston Martin or the Feathers Motorsport that we had in earlier on this season. Shame not to see James Guest and Tom Canning out again, but we've got the battle on here.
That's for the lead of Group GTO at this stage. Paul Bailey trying to keep Jay Shepherd behind. Now, Jay Shepherd is not scoring championship points, but he's going to try and manoeuvre the Lotus up the inside of the Lamborghini there. Saw the gap was going to close, got out of it, but great battle for the lead of the group.
Yeah, it's good to see a battle for the lead of Group GTO. We haven't seen that many close fights in Group GTO this year, but this is certainly one of the closer ones. And our champion-elect, I don't know, it's the matter confusing. He's champion-elect, and it's unlikely Paul Bailey's going to lead this weekend not being champion in Group GTO, but it's good to see him having to fight for the win in this race.
Yeah, I think mathematically Group GTO's already stitched up for Paul Bailey.
Yeah.
Group GTO, he secured that at Donington Park with the performances he put in there. But whilst he is squabbling away with Jay Shepherd for the lead of the group, Jay Shepherd, lots of oversteer there, turning oversteer. He's not eligible for championship points, Jay Shepherd, so he's not point scoring this weekend.
That was quite nice to watch, actually. That was a well-held slide from the Lotus Evora behind National Motorsport.
What would that be on lap number 4? Surely not cold rears still at this stage.
Probably just pushing too hard. No, you wouldn't imagine that in a rear-wheel drive car the rears will be too cold. They'll be fighting fit now. 46.6 is the fastest lap of the race set by Cook on that previous lap, which is now, what, 7/10 away from where we were qualifying. Let me have a quick look. Qualifying was a 45.8 and a 46.6. Yeah, only 8/10 away from qualifying now in a race situation where you're sort of saving the tyres a little bit more. So I would suggest that tyres are pretty much in their optimum window by now.
Yeah, of course, that's not the battle for the lead of the group, is it? Because that is being led by Marcus Short, actually. So it's second and third in Group GTO. I forgot the Moser was back with us for this weekend, so apologies there. Yeah. So a brilliant fight for second and for third in Group GTO as they descend down towards the bottom of the Bentley Straight. They're on lap number 4 currently. Paul Bailey still pushing hard, the man who we've seen race a raft of different cars over the years, whether it be Ferraris or Lamborghinis or Aston Martins.
Or Brabhams.
Or Brabhams, of course. Yeah, he's got a very good collection of sports cars, supercars and hypercars as Paul Bailey. And this Lamborghini that he is managing to keep ahead of the Lotus of Jay Shepherd is in reality a GT3 car, but without all of its air restrictors on, so that's why it goes into the GTO. So haven't got that balance of performance that all the GT3 cars have.
Yes, and that's also why it seems to be so much faster in a straight line than that. I say so much faster, not actually that hugely faster than the Evora, is it? The Evora seems to be keeping up quite nicely, so clearly some grunt underneath that. I was about to say underneath the hood, but it's not. It's in the rear of the car, of course, or the middle. And actually it looks like Jay Shepherd's lining up a move into the Wilson hairpin. No, Paul Bailey defends. Can he get it stopped? Yes.
Yep, so they still continue to fight over second and third in Group GTO. That's 6th and 7th overall in the race. Leading Group GT3 is still Hugo Cook, who now leads the race overall by 2 3/4 seconds. And last time through, set the fastest lap of the race. with a 1 minute 46.608. Leading Group GTC, we've got Dan Bazil, and leading Group GTH is the number 13 McLaren, still in the hands of Callum Davies.
Very consistent lapping from Cook at the front of the field, but we're going to continue to watch this battle for the podium places in Group GTO, because I think it is probably the closest battle on the grid right now. In fact, I'm almost certain it is. Oh no, that's a spin for the Lotus Amira.
Yes, it is. Yeah, that's Alana Carter who's had the spin, and hopefully we'll be able to get the car fired back into life. Now she's pointing in the wrong direction at the Wilson hairpin by the look of things, and really needs to get that car started, otherwise it might be in trouble.
Tom Roach in second place, who's chasing down our leader Cook, has actually got a track limits warning, so he's basically used up his free passes on the track limits around this circuit. This gap is now 3 seconds to the lead, and again 46.5. Oh, right on the road. This is going to be tricky for the cars to negotiate, because it's in a bit of a blind spot with the barrier on the inside.
I can see a safety car here because she hasn't got it started. It might be heat soak, or it may well be that it's a technical issue with the car that's caused it to spin, and then it won't restart. But with that car sitting where it is, and the field is spread out, there's no gap for the marshals to go out and try and push it out of harm's way.
No, there's not. And I was just about to say it a moment ago, but Cook. Oh, thank goodness that car's going again, because it's good to see that car out once again, and also we can continue racing. But at the front of the field, Cook, 46.5 that last lap, so every lap half a tenth faster than the previous so far, which is really good to see. But there's also some close battles down the field as well. Only 4 tenths it was, or 7 tenths, between the two leading GT4s, which we're looking at right now.
Yeah, absolutely. So Callum Davis still hanging on to the lead of Group GTH at this stage, but right on his coattails is Chris Hart, looking to see if he can squeeze the Morpheus Mercedes into prime position in Group GTH. He needs to close up by another half a car length or so. There's Charles Dawson, who's third in Group GTH, John Curry, who's fourth, and then Philip Carter, who's fifth. So those two are still at it, but it's still Mercedes just ahead of the slightly older McLaren, the 570S of Phil Carter.
Yeah, we've got 2 McLarens in the Group GTH field now. We've got the majority of them are the 570S, and we've got 1 or 2 of the newer, similar, they look very similar, but the Artura. So our leader is Davis at the front of the field, is in the Artura. Is that the only Artura? I think it might be, actually.
We've got 2 Arturas.
Oh, yes, and
we've got the Race Lab one in for this weekend.
That's Tim Docker, is that?
Tim Docker is in the Paddock Motorsport one, and then we've got the Race Lab one, which is the 13 one of Callum Davis. Yeah, of course. Yes. So the new Artura that was introduced into competition by McLaren earlier on this year,
and by all accounts, it's an improvement over the old
570s. Yeah. So here's Jay Shepherd. He's still trying to prise that door open on Paul Bailey, but Paul Bailey, who's been racing for a dozen years now, has got plenty of experience and just needs to make sure he gets the car cleanly off the corners, and then should just about be able to hang on to it still. But any slight mistake for Paul Bailey, and Jay Shepherd is there, isn't he?
Yeah, it's going to be a good race between these two, because they've pretty much been separated by less than half a tenth over the line the last 5 or 6 laps in a row. But you mentioned, just one small mistake, which is easily done in such a fast and difficult car to drive, such as a GT3 Lamborghini. What's a GT3? It's Group GTO, isn't it? But it's based off the GT3 shell and engine. Oh, slightly wide. Oh, and again the slider. Are we even seeing a replay? This is almost exactly what we saw.
They're both pushing on. Paul Bailey made a mistake and didn't get turned in properly, and then Jay Shepherd, slid the car through the corner. So they both made small mistakes, didn't they? Yeah,
but they're both getting away with it, and still almost back to back. And we see the Top Cats Lamborghini making its way back through the field.
It is, that's through and past the 999 Lamborghini. So that's the car that is being driven by Patrick Collins because of those issues with the gearbox in their Porsche. And that looks like that is a car that has been borrowed by the team from Cook Racing, I would have thought. So I think that's Hugo Cook's other car, isn't it? The car that was raced by Phil Keane.
Yes, it was, and it's it's clearly a good car, and I think doing a good job so far is Collins, just jumping in a race and going round, taking some respectable lap times.
Respectable lap times and picking off a few places along the way, So down in towards the bottom of Brundle and Nelson, still this squabble going on for 6th and 7th place overall, but 2nd and 3rd in Group GTO, whilst GTO is still continuing to be led by the Marcus Short-driven Mosler MT900. What a fight it is between Lamborghini and Lotus. the more boxy, aggressive styling of the Lamborghini, the much smoother and slick-looking lines of the Lotus, but in the driver's hands, both of these cars are pretty much identically matched, don't they?
Yeah, they are, and they again separated by less than a second, easily, potentially less than half a second. Over the line, once again, 6.5 tenths was the gap over the line this time, which is about as big as the gap has been at any point.
So through Ritchie's, onto the start of another lap that they will go. The V10 engine Lamborghini, the V6 engine Lotus. For our race leader now, there's now traffic to deal with, just coming up against Tim Docker's McLaren Artura. So this is one of the newer McLaren Arturas, stays out of harm's way. Then Tom Roach will have that traffic to deal with, and he'll probably meet that, I would have thought, at the perfect opportunity, right on the exit of Murray, so he should be able to power his Group GT3 McLaren through and past the Group GTH car. He's going to do it on the brakes, actually, in towards Murray's, doesn't really compromise the run. Can he get the car stopped? Yes, he can. Does he run wide? Not really. So needs the tidy stuff as he accelerates his way out of the corner.
Not really. It just dropped a wheel on the exit of the curb by the looks of it. Potentially won't have hit the track limit sensor, so might be okay. Although he is, you know, flirting with the penalty there if he does do that too many more times. As we remember earlier in the race, he did get a track limits black and white warning flag. So everything's settling down a little bit now in the front of the field.
10 minutes to go. Patrick Collins has picked up another place now at the wheel of the number 999 Lamborghini. It's come off the back of the grid, so he's now through and ahead of Philip Carter. So Philip Carter can't quite have the fun he was having trying to attack John Curry now because there's a Lamborghini in the way. And for Patrick Collins, this is all a learning process for him, isn't it? You ideally want to get to understand the new car and its peculiarities in testing, and then build on that as you head into the free practice session this morning, and then build on that again in towards qualifying, and build on it again in towards the race. But when the first time you've driven the car is on the formation lap for the race, it is a tough thing, isn't it?
Oh, it was a great shot of the, sorry to change the subject so quickly there, Mark, but the great shot of the front brake disc glowing on the Ferrari leading Group GTC car there of Dan DeZille. But no, you're right. You really build a weekend, and you kind of need the practice and sessions to go well to get the pace in the car. But I'd say almost potentially more importantly is the confidence.
Yeah.
Because a lot of these drivers are not professional drivers. It's not what they've done their whole life. A lot of them are effectively, this is their enjoyment. They do this for fun at the weekends. They race in GT Cup and other championships. But they're also very expensive and potentially dangerous machines, and you need the confidence. You need to build the confidence in a car to be able to push it right to the limit. And you know, if you're jumping in it for the first time in a race, you're not going to be able to set lap times really close. We can see the battle that's been trying for a while is actually is now coming to a head.
Yeah, Jay Shepherd finally manages to scamper through and ahead of Paul Bailey, but as bizarre as that sounds, that doesn't at all affect the championship points that Paul Bailey would score in Group GTO, because both Marcus Short in the Mosler and Jay Shepherd in the Lotus are non-championship scoring for the purposes of this weekend. So even though he's third in the group, Paul Bailey would still pick up the points for the win in that group, if that makes sense at all. And also this car that leads Group GTC, Dan DeZille, sharing with his father Graham DeZille in the longer pit stop race that's coming up later on today, but that is also not a championship point scoring car for this weekend. So even though Charlotte Gilbert had a spin and has now dropped outside of the top 10 and is still trying to recover in the Top Caps Racing Lamborghini, she is still potentially going to pick up the points for the win in Group GTC, albeit we are down in numbers in Group GTC this weekend, particularly with the Porsche having retired as well.
Yeah, of course, and that reduces the amount of points available, I believe, doesn't it, for that group?
It does. It means that Charlotte would pick up 15 points for the win in the group rather than 25, as she would get had everybody had been present who's been around this season.
Yeah. Coming back to that Lamborghini coming through the field, Collins, and then we've got our race leader making his way, Cook, in that red Audi R8 GT3, making its way through the Group GTH field, and again extending the gap in the track actually now to 3.6 seconds the last lap, and it looks like it's gone out a little bit this lap as well, looking at the sector times. Yeah, gone out, actually no, it's gone down ever so slightly with the middle sector, but just clearly taking it easy. He's going to go up the inside of the last corner. No, he thinks better of it, thinks I'm going to get a better exit on the Ram Racing Mercedes GT4, but 7 minutes to go, 3 seconds, not completely comfortable, but Cook has been in this position a number of times this year, taken a few race wins, so I'm sure he's feeling pretty confident in the car, and again, having been racing at Snetterton earlier on this season, he'll be comfortable there as long as he doesn't make any terrible mistakes. Again, trying not to curse anyone as much as I can.
Yeah, he's had, 8 group wins so far this year, 7 overall wins so far this year for Hugo Cook and Sasha Kakad. There is Ian Loggy back into the GT Cup Championship for another go at the wheel of the McLaren. We're so used to seeing Ian driving Mercedes over the course of the last few years, but it was the McLaren that he appeared in for 76 Racing earlier on this season here at Snetterton, hoping for better fortunes this weekend, partnered up as he will be in the pit stop race with Tom Empson. Lights continually flashing on that car as well, Ian Loggy. I'm sure that's not him continually pressing the button. It looks as though the button might be stuck in or something.
Yeah, I was about to call out the same thing as well, because normally you'd only ever press the light flashing button if your pit limit is on, which is clearly not because he's lapping fast, or you're trying to get the attention of the cars in front. Well, as you can see, there is no one in front. So yeah, there's some minor issue there, but it's not slowing him down. Still setting some very fast lap times and gapping the shorts in 4th place and dropping it back ever so slightly from our lead pair, but still circling around for what will be a podium, barring any unforeseen circumstances.
Now that we've had Patrick Collins in the Lamborghini weave his way through and past all the GTH cars, we've got our battle back again, haven't we, between John Curry and Philip Carter. So they are still pretty much together, and they'll still be fighting over 4th and 5th in Group GTH. That's 14th and 15th places overall. Philip Carter looking to see what he might be able to do, but equally as much John Curry will be focused on this Ram Racing Charles Dawson driven Mercedes that lies ahead. So there's not a great deal of space between 3rd, 4th and 5th in Group GTH.
No, once again, Group GTH very, very close, but just seeing that Make Happen Racing AMG and the Greystone McLaren coming close together with only a few minutes to go. Are we going to have a repeat of what we saw in the pit stop race last time we were here, with a last lap dramatic change? We shall see.
Hugo Cook still with work to do. Picks off the first of the cars, which is Alana Carter's Lotus. Then pick off the Group GTO BMW E46 of Chris Murphy, who is going to stay well and truly out of harm's way. So that's former champion Chris Murphy now placed down a lap by Hugo Cook, our overall race leader. Now the next car for Hugo Cook to deal with will be Charlotte Gilbert's Top Cat Racing Lamborghini, but that's a fair way up the road, so it's going to take him a lap or two to even get there. And now we've also got the lead battling Group GTH starting to carve its way through and past the Lotus. So through goes Callum Davis, taking the opportunity to squeeze through as well as Chris Hart. So nothing to choose between the McLaren and the Mercedes for the lead of Group GTH as they head on to the top of the Bentley Straight.
Chris Hart's done well there. He's managed to get right into the back of Davis once again, and potentially might even be close enough to make a move as the AMG hiding up behind Davis. And you can see it, Davis now feeling the pressure, moving, and there you go, Hart flashing the lights as well, showing him, I'm still here.
Yeah, he's not going to make it easy for Callum Davis, say, who's far more well used to racing things like Ginettas, but has got this fantastic McLaren Artura at his disposal. Chris Hart is a former winner in the championship, winner in the Fun Cup, so he's well used to doing longer races, but has far more power at his disposal in this Morpheus Motorsport McLaren, Mercedes AMG GT4. So the two of them still together as they start to head over the start-finish line. Again, Chris Hart just not going to be close enough, is he, by the time they get towards Ritchie's?
No, they're just going to need to get that gap below about half a second. I think the gap at the moment is just about half a second, 4.800 or 48,000. 4800. My maths is leaving me there, but it's good driving through the field from Hugo Cook. He's extended that gap again that last lap ever so slightly, so carving his way through the traffic nicely and calmly. And a lot of traffic management is just sometimes being patient. Sometimes it pays to be patient. You can often barrel up the inside of a car who's slower than you into a corner, have a bit of a wobble, then come out narrow, and you can feel like you've done a good job. But if you'd have just waited and then got a good exit out of the corner and drive past them on the straight, you can often do better. And we've also got a full weekend of racing ahead of us, so a lot of the drivers will be just taking it that ever so slightly a bit easier, giving a bit more margin so they don't create any damage for themselves that the teams may struggle to fix.
Ian Loggy in the background, still flashing his lights. He's coming up towards some back markers now, so now they probably do need to be flashing, but clearly some sort of issue with that McLaren. And is Phil Carter going to try and squeeze his way through? No, the door is still closed by John Curry, so still John Curry hanging on to 4th in Group GTH at the moment, despite the very best efforts of Phil Carter. he hasn't as yet been able to muster his way through, and now they've got the McLaren, which is no longer flashing its lights, coming up behind them.
Maybe the light switch has flipped itself round, so when he presses it, it stops flashing.
There we go.
Yeah.
I think you're right, yes. I think you're absolutely right.
Flashing once again.
Oh no, there we go, it stopped again now.
Yeah, the Group GTH cars probably think that Ian Logie is very angry. He's driving behind the wheel. He's probably just driving around. Yeah, stop. So there's an intermission issue, maybe just a bit of a wiring issue, but the car soldiers on nonetheless, and this battle in Group GTH continues. And it will probably continue until the end of the race. Of course, last time these two fought at Snetterton, it was the two pro drivers, Phil Keane and Mikey Broadhurst, when they had that last lap dice. Of course, this time it's John Curry and my brain has gone blank.
Philip Carter.
Philip Carter, of course it is.
Right, so back to the lead battle in Group GTH. Now they are at the moment behind Chris Murphy, so this is all for overall race position. Chris Murphy's BMW is 9th, Callum Davis in the McLaren Artura is in 10th place, and then you've got in 11th place Chris Hart. Running very wide there was Paul Bailey, who went beyond the curb lines there coming out of Agostini, and that has allowed, I think, him to go back through and ahead of Jay Shepherd, but he also lost a place there to Ian Logie, did he not? He was going through to lap him.
It looks like the gap between those two for second place in the in Group GTO has extended quite a lot, so either Jay Shepherd's made a big issue, or had a big issue that we didn't see, or Paul Bailey's put the hammer down.
Yeah, 6 seconds between the pair of them. But for the final time, by the look of things, our race leader is down in towards Brundle and Nelson. Tom Roach at the wheel of the JMH Racing, or Orange Racing powered by JMH McLaren, has pushed hard. It does look as though he's closed up the gap a little bit in this particular lap, because it was 3 seconds from Audi back to McLaren, but it certainly looks as though round 23 of the 2023 GT Cup Championship is going to go the way of Cook Racing. And Hugo Cook at the wheel of the Audi R8 GT3 Evo 2. That's going to be 8 overall wins for the season. That makes it 9 group wins for the year as they come through to claim the win, with Tom Roach already through to take the checkered flag in 2nd place, and Ian Logie should wrap up 3rd place. We've just seen Charlotte Gilbert go through and over the start-finish line. She finishes 7th overall, and that puts her 2nd in Group GTC. But for Group GTH, it doesn't look as though these cars are going to worry the battle, because they are fighting for 4th and 5th in the group, as they have been all race long. It looks as though Group GTH is going to go the way of the number 13 McLaren Artura.
Yeah, good recovery drive from Charlotte Gilbert to come through after the spin on the first lap, and there we go. That was the McLaren of Davis who did take the win in Group GTH.
So just got the last few cars to usher over the start-finish line, including John Curry, who is going to be shadowed all the way to the start-finish line by Philip Carter, who sits behind. Just ahead of them is Alana Carter, and no relationship, by the way. And then we get the Mosler over the start-finish line, which will be the winner of Group GTO. So brilliant run in that Mosler from Marcus Short, who comes through to finish in 4th place overall and scoop up the win in Group GTO. Still a few more cars to take the checkered flag, though, including the Paddock Motorsport McLaren Artura of former Volkswagen Cup racer Tim Docker, who is just charging his way round through Coram for the final time. Dan de Ziel comes through, so that's the 5th place car overall and the winner of Group GTC, but not scoring championship points, so we need to do all the maths over the lunch break and try and work out as to what the new points permutations are, because that car there finished 2nd in Group GTC, but is a championship scoring car, so it gets a very complex part of the season. So final car over the start-finish line to take the checkered flag. Hugo Cook has made it a lights to flag victory, really, Piers. He was never that far up the road from Tom Roach, but always had enough of a buffer.
Yeah, the gap was just on that sort of cusp of being comfortable, but never quite there. And Tom Roach was keeping the pressure on, but not this time. Good drive from Hugo Cook.
Let's confirm the results then. Hugo Cook claims the win, his 8th overall win of the season, with Tom Roach in 2nd place and Ian Logie in 3rd. Winning Group GTO was Marcus Short, who finished in 4th place, with the winner of Group GTC, Dan de Ziel, finishing in 5th. Paul Bailey was there in 6th place. 7th place was Charlotte Gilbert, recovering from her spin. Jay Shepherd there in 8th place. 9th was Chris Murphy, and completing the top 10 off the back of the grid in a car he's unfamiliar with. Great drive by Patrick Collins, I would say that, to complete the top top 10. Then as we move outside of the top 10, in 11th place, winning Group GTH, is Callum Davis from Chris Hart, who we had a good battle with, who finished in 12th place. Then it was Charles Dawson from John Curry and Philip Carter, ahead of Tim Docker, David Frankland, and the last of the finishers will be the car of Alana Carter, who finished in 18th place at the wheel of her Lotus, a couple of laps off the lead as a result of that spin, which lost her a lot of time at the Wilson hairpin. So that's the 23rd round of the championship done, and whilst the cars make their way back down into the pit lane area, we'll shortly be getting some reaction from some of the drivers down there, and see as to what they thought to that race, and also maybe their thoughts as to how they approach that longer pit stop race a little bit later on. You can see also just how blustery it is here. We've been talking about the wind and how that's affecting the cars as well. It's a real headwind as you come over the start-finish line and up the Senna straight, and in stark contrast to that, you get that same wind but as a tailwind as you go down the Bentley straight and in towards Brundle and Nelson, and that does affect the cars. It affects the handling of the cars and the way that they draft each other. So let's get some reaction from down there in the pit lane. Piers Pryor has made his way from the commentary box to the pit lane, and down there is Amber Jones.
Well, that was a really interesting sprint race. Piers, and congratulations to Hugo for making that win. So how did you find that you were up in the comms box, weren't you, Piers, getting into the action?
Yeah, it was a good race, wasn't it, Amber? It was Tom Roach is pushing hard to try and keep up with Hugo Cook, but not quite able to do it. It's about 3 seconds at the end. Good result in, as well for the shorts. Winning Group GTO, of course, in the Mosler. Good to see them back on the grid and doing well. And then Davis again in Group GTH. Good drive, but pushed all the way by Chris Hart.
Yeah, some great battles in Group GTO, and Jay Shepherd was doing really well, and then eventually he was struggling a little bit, wasn't he? Jay Shepherd was doing really well, and then he struggled a little bit. There was a little bit of oversteer when he's come around the corners, but I think he put in a really great lap towards the end.
Yeah, it was good. I didn't quite catch that, Amber. I was just listening out to something I heard over the tannoy. But no, I thought it was a great race. I think it really bodes well for the rest of the day, because of course we have the pit stop race coming up later on, which brings the pit lane behind us into play. Of course, 2 drivers as well. A few different pit stop strategies might come into play. Yeah, be interesting to see what goes on there.
Well, I think we should also talk about Group GTC and Charlotte Gilbert. So as I mentioned before, she's changed the setup and they came 7th or 8th in this race. So it's still good. She's getting used to the car, and they're contenders for the weekend. Although they have won Group GTC Championship overall, their contenders are the Ferraris of Graham DeZille and Dan DeZille. So it was actually a great position for Graham and Dan DeZille getting P5.
Yeah, it was good to see the Charlotte Gilbert came through the field after that spin at the start. Potentially that pro setting. Remember you said she might have changed a few settings. Maybe that would have contributed to that spin, but she clearly had good pace towards the end of the race. Looking forward to a good battle in Group GTC later on.
So many great battles between Group GT3 and GTH in particular, but we will be back at 3:15 later on. So stay tuned and we will see you then.